Hello everyone, welcome to a very casual conversation about my top 10 most played PS4 and PS5 games, because when PlayStation 5 came out, Sony finally decided, yeah, we'll show people all that telemetry we've been tracking for 7-something years at the time, because they're always tracking your PS4 and now your PS5 playtime, and now they finally show you on your profile. Which, it's funny because we just did a video kind of going over the whole tracking thing, because now they put this data on the Game Hub page in the bottom right corner, and so you've got more and more people exposed to these numbers, and so sometimes if a game has an in-game tracker, that time is often not the same as what the console is reporting, so we did a conversation about, why that tends to be very inaccurate. But at least considering I did that video, I already have a good idea of most of these numbers and how accurate they are, and I believe most of them are, for the most part, pretty close. And I think, what was it, Metal Jesus did this with the Switch, because that's also another system that, much in the same way, it shows you those numbers on your profile, which is always so fascinating. I love seeing my playtime for games. So let me share mine with you. Now, PS4 cycle and up, this is something where this probably would have been way more fascinating on PlayStation 3, and I would have went back to those save files individually to check them and sort of catalog it that way, but I lost that save data from the PSN name change video, so I'm still salty about that. But that likely would have been a lot more interesting, because I got way more time in on PlayStation 3, PS4, now PS5, you grow up, you have responsibilities, so don't get to play nearly as much anymore, and I also don't really do a lot of multiplayer stuff, so a lot of this is pure single player, mostly. But we're starting off right on number 10, which is Horizon Zero Dawn on PlayStation 4. It reports 90 hours, that's about right, and funny enough, I still have not finished the Frozen Wilds DLC, as you can see, so that is one game that I am bound to go back to eventually. I did start the Frozen Wilds DLC too. I tried to get it done before Forbidden West came out, which clearly did not happen. So that 90 is going to go up, which we've also got the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition on PlayStation 4. Now, I remember this quite well. This was my first time playing Skyrim. I didn't actually play the PlayStation 3 version, which was probably a good call, considering it's not the best way to play that game, let's just put it that way. But yeah, by the time the PS4 port came out, bump in resolution, frame rate, I think it's a bump in frame rate, or I think it's unlocked. Can't remember exactly. The point is, this was my first time playing the game, finally. That was back in 2017. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those titles where you could easily sink 300-something hours into it, and, I'm not going to jump into the trophies, but I'm missing one for the Platinum, which is simply reaching level 55 or something, which I just never got around to doing. And I wasn't worried, because I'm like, okay, I've got all the other DLC separate trophy packs that I'm going to play at some point, but that was back in 2017, so I got to go back eventually. But I always get really nervous when it's been that long since I last played something and there's like a save file that I intend on going back to. I do find that Skyrim is kind of like riding a bike. You don't really ever forget it, because I have jumped in here and there throughout those past 5 years or so, and it is very, very natural pick up and play, so it's not like I totally forgot what I was doing, but just as a sort of offshoot, I remember I didn't finish the Platinum for Final Fantasy 13 on PlayStation 3. Now that file's gone, so it doesn't matter anyway, but that was something where I got most of it done, and I was still working on a trophy for grabbing all the items or weapons or something. I can't remember what it was, but I was almost done with it. But then I'm like, well, there's no way I can go back to that, because just due to the nature of that game, I would be so lost, right? So, but that's an example. Anyway, moving on to Killzone Shadowfall, 106 hours played. This definitely has the multiplayer component playing a big role, especially because I tried to do it legitimately when the game came out as a PS4 launch title, so played a lot of the multiplayer, or at least it felt like it. I think 106 hours, you look at that and gosh, you compare it to live service stuff nowadays, and I know people can easily push 300, 400, 500 hours, 1,000 hours, like it's, you know, no big deal because it's something you know, hop into every weekday night or something. But for me, I, you know, tried to do a lot of this legit back in the day. I mean, most games I try to play legit, obviously. But then I put it down, and then that was another video where, you know, before the servers were completely shut down, I then used a boosting method to try and clean up the online trophies, which I did for most of them outside of a DLC pack. So that actually added a bit of hours onto this one as well. So this one, I mean, I guess it does deserve to be up there, but a lot of that time is certainly bloated. Death Stranding is at 106 hours, and it's actually right near Killzone Shadowfall, oddly enough, but that was a full 106 hours playing just that game. I think I've talked about this one enough at this point, but I really enjoyed it. That was a very fast 106 hours, but I get it for some folks. They jump in, they're like, what is this? I just can't do it. They put it down right away. For me, smooth sailing. Really enjoyed it and looking forward to the second game. Next, Uncharted, the Nathan Drake collection, and I am not quite done with that either. 89%, 111 hours. I just have to do brutal mode on Uncharted 3 and like one or two other trophies in there. That was like, man, I love the Uncharted games. So doing 1, 2, and the brutal mode trophies for those, great, also challenging. I mean, brutal mode is really nutty for Uncharted because, I mean, God, you can't even like so much as duck your head out for like more than a second. If you take a bullet, the screen's like gray immediately. You can't even use the standard cover system. You have to like sort of just barely creep over the edge and try to get a shot in to pick some guys off. Super tough. But yeah, I just played a ton of it at the time when it came out, and then I was like, woof, man, I'm just kind of like, I need to put this down. I think, well, either the brutal mode or I think it was the speed run I have to do for Uncharted 3, but yeah, that one's been sitting for a while. The Last of Us Remastered at 116 hours, so right next to the Naughty Dog Uncharted games. And The Last of Us Remastered, so funny enough, this is my only Last of Us Platinum. I'm missing it on PS3, but PS3 I made sure to get the online trophies done, although I didn't get the DLC wrapped up. But I made sure to get the multiplayer done on that just so that it's like, okay, now I'm the Platinum secured. So whenever I feel like going back to the single player, I can do that. But this is the only one where like from top to bottom, I got it all done. And I played it legitimately, although I think for the factions multiplayer, you can kind of cheese your way through it where you have to go through both sides of the factions, right? So you can actually start a match, drop out, and that will progress the factions multiplayer sort of light story mode where you have like a bunch of people in your crew or whatever it's called, right? But that's kind of how that works. It's sort of weird. I think you'll know what I'm talking about if you've played the game before. But you can sort of accelerate that process. I did do that, but otherwise I played the minimum matches required. So, and then also grounded difficulty as well, which that's I remember that having some tough moments, but it's one of those things where, you know, the game has some moments are like a squeeze, so you have to eliminate all enemies in that area before you can truly progress, but then there's other areas where you can simply just sort of beeline right to where you need to go, and so that's something you want to do for that game. Really any game that has a max difficulty setting. Now this one is a bit suspect. Bloodborne at 117 hours. So in the video about the tracking and how it's like not accurate, that was one thing in there. I'm like, I don't know what's going on with Bloodborne because my file for this, the only file that I have is like 60 something hours. And I know for a fact I had another character when the game came out. Like I started a file, played that for a while. It was the first Souls game that I like really sat down and tried to get through. I played a little bit of the other ones prior, but never really owned them or tried to finish them. So I know like I was like stuck on Cleric Beast for a long time, for an embarrassing amount of time until I had to get good. But like, it wasn't 50 something hours, you know, because we're talking 50, 60 hours for the file I do have, and then there's 50 something more hours that is unaccounted for. So some of that could be chalked up to maybe me leaving the game sitting for a bit. I don't really know. So I don't think that's genuine, but it could be some weirdness with me having the game running and I just was doing other things. But Persona 5, God, 146 hours. No surprise there. 50% trophies as well. So this is not something where I was already working on another playthrough to finish up the trophies. That was my first playthrough. And the amazing thing is, like, it's kind of hard to well, I guess you could play the game pretty fast, or if you're trying to beeline it, but for the most part, you can't really beeline the game the way you can other titles, right? Like, you have to work through every individual day. You have to choose to do something every day, right? It's not like you can skip those sequences outside of just skipping a bunch of dialogue and not reading and stuff like that. But it seems like for most people, the bare minimum when they finish this game is 100 hours, and from there, it's like, how many more hours shows, you know, I guess your patience with going through the palace and being all slow and just trying to read everything, all the dialogue options, speak with everybody, just soak up the world in that universe. And so for me, that topped off at 146 hours, but I think my file says 120, so that might have been some reloading saves or something. I don't really know, but yeah, 146, a lot of time with that one. After that is Grand Theft Auto 5. It says PlayStation 5, but this is the silly thing with how Sony can get a little screwy with the title IDs and upgrading games, and, you know, how it's ID'd on your profile, and we'll talk about something right after this. But this is the PS4 version, 199 hours. All that DLC just ruining my 100%. I don't know if I'll ever get the 100% at this point, because the PS3 version also, I have the Platinum, but yeah, missing a lot on that as well. And now it's like impossible to get the 100% unless, you know, the servers are restored, and then I could maybe do it that way, but I don't really know. Yeah, love the single player. I will always jump back in and do the single player, which I probably should do at some point for the real PS5 version of this game. But a lot of this is simply the online, so reaching that last rank takes quite a bit, and well, I think nowadays it's a lot easier to do. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but at the time, from, you know, when it was only on PlayStation 3, then the PS4 version came out, it was pretty grindy. So 199, and that was pretty much all pure gameplay the entire way through. This would be my number one, is City Skylines. So, love city builders. I am totally into city builders. I think a lot of you've probably picked up on that at this point with the God, when we do collection updates, right? You see me pick up a few simulation-based games, so totally into those on PC and console. I really don't mind the console controls, and City Skylines is great on PlayStation. The console version is really good. Now, this is actually higher, so this is the weird thing, right? When the game came out, it was digital only, but the EU got a physical copy first. Now, we know how I do these things. I don't really want to play I don't want digital. I want physical. So I imported an EU copy to play it on that, and I did. And I only got like 30-something hours into that one before I started playing the, I guess, NTSC version, because this is how PSN does it, right? There can be regional lists, trophy lists, there can be regional, well, and this is where it gets really screwy, right? A game can have a regional trophy list, so there could be Japan, North America, EU, or it could not have that, but it will still be identified as a different game on your profile, which this is. So this is one single trophy list, but, and I'll throw up the B-roll, you'll see that it does appear on my profile a second time with the remaining hours that I had spent with the game. And also DLC doesn't move over as well, which is why I had to actually abandon my EU copy, which I still have, but, you know, I had to stop playing on that copy because it was not, you can't install and use DLC on that particular game. So at that point I had to move over to a standard North American copy, which could be from disc or PSN, but it has to be my region to use the DLC appropriately. Or I guess I could have just used EU DLC, but I think you get my point, my rambling. 231 hours, not 100%, kind of nutty. I would like to get that done before City Skylines 2, because that is absolutely going to be a game where I'm probably going to spend another multi-hundred hour, session into, or not a single session, but going to be playing a lot of that as well. So yeah, that's it. I mean, that's my my top 10, and yeah, I feel like these numbers aren't that big, but like I said, it's just times are different. I think my PS3 numbers would have been a lot more interesting. I think at the very least, not to say like my top 10 would have been filled with like crazy numbers, but I think like number 10 would probably start in the like near 200s, and then maybe my number 1 would have been maybe a 400 or 500 hour game. I think for sure it would have been COD 4 though, because I played a lot of that multiplayer. Anyway, that's my top 10. Let me know what you've all been playing as well, right? Dive into your profiles, do some sharing in the comments. I like reading that stuff for these kinds of videos, but hopefully you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. You take it easy.